All right, great. All right,
So
welcome
we want to go
everyone.
ahead.
We're going to go ahead and get started, and we're going to start with Elaine. Go ahead, Elaine.
Okay. Welcome, everybody. I'm Elaine Ikeda, the Executive Director of California Campus Compact, and this webinar is a result of a partnership between California Campus Compact of the Mountain West, and Minnesota Campus Compact. And we have more than, I think, 18 states represented. And I know we have people joining us, so we're going to do a quick little introduction and then get started. And I want to acknowledge and thank the staff of all three Campus Compact offices in helping to put this webinar together. Over the last few years, I've been asked a lot of times when I visit campuses, we're looking for a tool or a platform to track our service learning and community service hours and placements. What do you know about the different systems that are out there? And I think a lot of our other state compacts get the same kind of questions when we are out in the field. So we decided to put together a webinar that would review several of the platforms and tools that are available. And this webinar is going to be facilitated by Jill Addison Jacobson, who's a project consultant with California Campus Compact. And Jill worked in the service learning field from 1992 to 2005. She provided service learning technical assistance and training systems for K-12 and higher education throughout California. And she also, during this time, co-authored several resource guides to support service learning practitioners from both community and school-based settings. And most recently, she worked outside the service learning field as a small business owner and development director for local nonprofits. So we're really excited that Jill could help us out with this webinar. And first, I'm going to turn it over to Stephanie Schooley, the Executive Director of Campus Compact of the Mountain West, to go over a few technicalities about the platform that we're actually using today.
Great, thanks, and welcome to you all as you're joining in. We're so excited about the avid interest in this topic, and as Elaine said, it is something that we hear often from the Campus Compact perspective from institutions. So hopefully this will be a benefit to you and your institution as we move forward. First of all, welcome to Zoom. This platform is listen only for participants, and mostly that's so that we keep the background noise clear so that you can really get the most out of the webinar and make it as clear as possible for you. So how do you interact? How do you post comments, etc.? If you look on your screen, there are two buttons that you can use in order to interact both with Jill as the facilitator and with the 100 registrants that we have for this webinar. The chat function, first of all, if you click on that button, it allows you to post comments, to, particularly as Jill's talking, to comment on things that you find interesting or problematic as we go forward. And that is really an ongoing conversation among participants to be able to interact with the content a bit. So feel free to use that chat button as things come up for you during Jill's presentation. The second piece is a Q&A button, and that really is the place from which we will pull questions in our facilitated question and answer section, which we've left 15 minutes, so a full quarter of the webinar is really dedicated to your questions and to having the facilitators on this call be able to provide as much content that is what you want to hear as possible. So as you think about what you want to hear or need to know for this to be of value, of most value to you, post those questions in the Q&A box, and we will either respond to you personally via text, so we'll just type back a response to you if it's something that's possible to do that with, or we'll bring that question to Jill during that 15-minute Q&A piece and make sure that we can address as many of those questions as possible as we move forward. After the webinar, we have the handouts that you'll see here. As you'll notice in a little bit, there are a few of the screens that are small because it's very dense content. So don't worry if you're squinting and having a hard time seeing all of the type on there, because you will receive those handouts after the webinar. So you'll have all of this content in a file after we finish. If you're having challenges and you need a little bit of technical assistance, you can feel free to contact Janine Mason, who's here in beautiful Colorado, the Campus Compact of the Mountain West office. There's her email address, which is probably the best thing to use since she is also helping us call those questions for Q&A. Her phone number is there too, but let's just use the email address. The last piece is that we will be sending out an evaluation of the webinar following. So you'll receive those handouts, like I mentioned, from California Campus Compact office, and you'll receive a link to a SurveyMonkey question just to let us know how we can make this experience even better going forward and what was of most value. And look for that in the mail. Please participate in the survey so that we can continue with our improvement of our programs and services to you all. Okay, with that, I turn it over to Jill, and as they say, take it away.
Thank you so much. So I'd like to talk to you a little bit about what we're going to try to accomplish in the next 40 minutes or so, and we're really committed to the questions. So at some points I might talk a little too fast. I will try to slow that down. But I'm going to start by really talking about what we did explore, what we are talking about, and what we're not talking about. There have been a lot of resources on the listserv. We really did look at most of them. Some of them were outside of the scope of what we're going to share today, and talk to you a little bit about what some of those are. Then we'll move right into, within our scope, how we did define the terms that we were looking at as we evaluated these platforms, talk to you about the platforms we did encounter that we thought met our scope. We'll walk you through each of them. We'll look at two of them in just a little bit more depth so you can see a couple screenshots. And most importantly, we'll close with thinking about how you take this back to your own campus. A lot of what I'm going to say is not anywhere near as important as thinking about what you need. So don't spend the entire webinar scribbling. We are sending a lot of handouts, but if you can just use them as an opportunity to take some notes and reflect on things that would be helpful to you in organizing your campus. And to go from there, let me tell you how we're thinking about what your campus might be. So the tools that we're looking at for this were designed for a centralized office on a higher education campus to organize, track, and report on a fairly comprehensive service learning program. I'll probably also use interchangeably the word engaged campus. But I just want to clarify that we are really talking about people that work probably as their full-time job, or at least as part of their job, to coordinate service and service learning opportunities for students on higher education campuses. So we're going to start by sharing some things that actually are not exactly on that. We're going to zoom through 3 slides of websites that you might have seen on listservs as related to this topic of tracking, reporting on service learning, and they're not actually going to be part of our conversation today, but we are going to send them to you because we do see their value, but they're not in our scope of helping a centralized office on a higher ed campus track, organize, and report on a comprehensive service learning program. So the first thing we encountered were a lot of websites that were designed to help volunteers sign up for service projects. So in this case, the service project already has to exist, and it's a tool to help people get on board with it. So we found Eventbrite, Sign Up Genius, Volunteer Sign Up, Volunteer Spot. And again, you'll get all these links, you'll get the URLs, you'll get any information about how to track them, but they're not going to be part of our platform discussion. Most of the history here is they were designed for K-12 organizations, mainly to help like PTOs get snack signups going, drivers for field trips. They have a lot of amazing capacity. Most of them are 100% free, but they're not really going to help you organize your entire campus service effort. But if you've got a great volunteer activity as part of homecoming, alumni weekend, the Residence Hall Association needs to get some signups, they might be a fantastic tool for you for that. So we'll pass those along to you, but we won't consider them part of our platform for really organizing your campus office. Second set of things that we're not going to present to you as helping organize your entire campus office were some volunteer matching websites. All for Good, GiveBab, Volunteer Match, Volunteer Solutions. I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area. I did searches on all of these. Sometimes they were amazing. I got a bunch of volunteer opportunities that could really help me. Sometimes I was referred to volunteer opportunities in Texas. So obviously there are regional differences. There are focus differences. Volunteer Solutions, for example, really is organized around international service. And I am not confident of being able to tell you how often volunteer opportunities are updated on these websites or what kind of quality control is in terms of checking the agencies. But I certainly think that they have incredible uses and might be able to help your campus get started if you're looking for new volunteer placements, but they're not going to help you organize your entire campus office around a service or service learning program. So we'll be sending those along too. And the last thing we're going to send along are some other websites that just didn't meet everything in our scope. OrgSync and Collegiate Link, and I know some of you are actually using Collegiate Link, where these are systems designed to link students on a campus to all kinds of organizations and programs. So absolutely service might be one of these, but it might be fraternities and sororities. It might be sporting activities. It could be anything. And so they weren't really formatted around organizing a campus service office. And then the last two that we've seen on listservs that are not going to be part of our platform review are Lion Software CSIBA and Community Engagement Collaboratory. And both of those are really helping campuses describe their footprint in the community, how many places they touch a community, how many hours they might contribute. But this is, again, not only including service hours, but also maybe research projects they do in those communities, just all kinds of interactions with the communities. And they're not necessarily designed to help you organize your service. It's more looking at the impact of your service. So those ones will be sent to you, but not as part of our platform review. So now we're going to get to the thing that we said we know you can't read. Again, this is coming to you as an Excel spreadsheet after the webinar, and you will be able to manipulate it completely. But this unreadable thing is actually going to be the heart of how we spend our time together in the next time period. So what we've looked at, what you're going to be getting is across the top of this chart are 20 characteristics that we looked at as being important to organizing a campus service office. And then we identified 15 platforms that we thought demonstrated some of these characteristics. One thing you'll notice pretty quickly is that absolutely no platform had all 20 characteristics. So that's where I go back to what's most important is what you need. As we go through this, you need to think about what's going to be most important for your campus, because you're not going to be able to get everything. And so you need to start with what you're thinking about. Let me just catch my breath. Yep. Make sure that we've said what we need to. So what we're going to do next is go through the 20 characteristics. I'm going to talk to you about how we define those characteristics. And what I would encourage you to do during this part is take some notes on some of these characteristics that seem really important to you, that you're like, yeah, wow, if we could get that, it would really make our life easier. And because then we'll start to review the platforms. And if you know a couple characteristics that are just going to be important to you, you're going to be able to weed out platforms that have those where you can start doing your own research and platforms that don't, that you can just take off your list. So we're going to go through the 20 characteristics now, and we've grouped them by type. So the first thing we're going to look at is who can create a profile on this platform. One thing to know is that many of these platforms were not created for institutions of higher education or even for any kind of education. So they use the word volunteer a lot as opposed to student, but they're going to be interchangeable for us. So the question is, can a student go on there and create any kind of profile about themselves? This might just be basic information, their phone number, their email, what year in school they are. It might also be more comprehensive. What is their interest in a service placement? What is their availability? Do they have transportation? So we know how far we can deal with them in terms of geography of placement. So whether a student can create a profile was one of the questions. Second thing we looked at is, can faculty create a profile? And in this case, I probably want to say actually faculty versus class, because what a lot of these programs allow somebody to do is to post, say, Engineering 101 has a 10-hour service learning community service requirement. It can be fulfilled in these kind of ways at X agencies or doing this kind of service. So a platform that allows a faculty profile in many ways allows a course profile so that a student then could go and they're in Engineering 101 and they need to figure out how to fulfill this, and they can look it up and then potentially link to agencies or placements that meet that need. Finally, a question about, can an agency have a profile on this platform? If they can, we can learn a little bit about that agency's mission, probably their proximity to the campus, what they need volunteers for sometimes, maybe whether there's a minimum hours requirement, so something of that nature. So those are the first three characteristics that we're looking at. The second set is what within the agency profiles do they allow volunteer listings, so that there might be a platform that you can have a nice blurb about an agency. You know, the Second Harvest Food Bank is represents these two counties and they provide meals to low-income residents. But the tier of volunteer listings is where they then go, and these are the 5 kinds of things we need: warehouse helpers, drivers, client intake. And so when a platform says they have volunteer listings, we've taken the agency profile to the next level. And searchable database is really just another level within the volunteer listings, where some of these platforms allow a student to say, hey, I'm really interested in the issue of hunger. I have to be on public transportation or walkable from campus, and I'm only available Tuesday and Thursday afternoons. Some of them can't do that kind of sophisticated search, but that's what we mean by searchable database. Can a student put in interest or time or proximity and come up with placements? The next set of characteristics have to do with, after a student's found a volunteer placement, what they can do. Some of them allow a volunteer to sign up right into the platform. So click on that link and be linked to the agency. The agency knows they're coming, knows what time they're coming, of that nature. And the volunteer scheduling is really just another level of the volunteer sign up. Some of these platforms have the ability to say, hey, we need 20 volunteers for a beach cleanup on Saturday morning, whereas we only need 2 volunteers to do client intake on Friday morning. So they'll actually go far beyond signing up to helping a campus schedule volunteers for their work. Some campuses and a lot of these platforms were built from the idea of group service projects, and a lot of them look like they might have a little bit of their history in the Greek system. So one of the questions we just asked is, do these platforms have the ability to handle group signups? And that might be everything from students in a course section who are doing it together to students in a fraternity that want to do a team building activity. So group capacity is the next thing we looked at. Since when I started, I thought I was looking for platforms that could support service learning, and we became really clear that really it needs to be a much broader than that. But we kept on this question of, can faculty approve placements? And in this case, this would mean, go back to our Engineering 101 thing, a student might say, I found this, can you tell me whether it's going to count for that course? So the platforms that have the faculty approving placements, it's just a layer in part of that volunteer sign up that really clarifies for the student that the work they're signing up to do is going to meet the needs of that course or that faculty member. The next set of criteria that we're looking at start to get into a little bit more of the tracking. The first thing is just a question of, does it allow the student themselves to track their hours? This can be a very simple report. You know, he or she worked at this agency this many days for this many hours. And many of these platforms do offer that kind of capacity. The report capacity is kind of a more detailed step from that. A lot of times it will look at a campus and say, in the last month, this school had X number of volunteers at this many agencies for a total hours of service to this. One of the real differences on these platforms is whether you can customize these reports or whether they come predetermined. And so depending what your needs are, that's something you'll need to explore further, but the report capacity reflects that ability. Activity reporting is a chance for the student to take the hours tracking to a slightly deeper level. And here they can talk back in a way to their faculty member or their advisor and let you know, not only was I at this agency for 2 hours on Friday afternoon, here's what I did. Just so we might be interested to know that they were talking to volunteers versus stuffing envelopes. Maybe it doesn't matter. It kind of depends their intent on the service and what part of your campus they're working in. But sometimes that kind of what they did is going to be as important as how many hours they worked and where they were. The next thing is just a question of, does this platform have some other capacities? Two of these are about communication, and one is kind of taking this back to service learning. But do they have an email capacity? And that can really range from just a reminder, you're signed up to be at X agency at this time. Don't forget to wear closed-toed shoes and bring a water bottle, whatever it might be. Other ones are far more sophisticated and can say, Engineering 101 service hours are due in 2 weeks, and we see that you haven't signed up for any service placements yet. So that email capacity is when a program can start to communicate with people that have profiles on it, and when profiles can interact with each other. So an agency might be able to speak to a student or a faculty member. Some of them take this idea of an email capacity really to the next level and allow some group discussions and forums. And especially when you might have courses or groups working together, this could have some real benefits to you. It could scan from the logistical, the starting time's been moved back by a half an hour, meet the van outside the union at this time, all the way to those of you that were at this placement last week that raised a lot of issues about hunger in our community. How did you feel about it? So those discussion forums, some of them can be moderated, others not. But that's what the group discussion, if a platform has that, that's what we're talking about. And the reflection space is really looking at that criteria we said before, where a student can do activity reporting, where this is what I did at the agency. This is where there's some open space on some of these platforms for students to really reflect on the impact or ask some deeper questions, maybe back to the agency or maybe to their professor or the staff at the service centers on campus. So that's what the reflection space is. It's more comprehensive, it's deeper, it's broader than the activity reporting, although it's in that same vein of capability. The next question we looked at is who can really access these platforms, and this just comes to a question of how is your service center organized? How do you see yourself using this tool? Do you see students coming directly into the center and meeting with a staff member to get volunteer placements, or do you see them being able to log in from a resident's home and find a placement for themselves? So a question of, can students access it directly? Can faculty and staff access it directly? And can community partners access the platform directly? We always made the assumption that the staff at the community service center on the campus would, of course, be able to manipulate the platform. And the last two criteria that we looked at were whether it was web-based. This is just a question, again, of where people can access it. Are they going to need to be in? Is it going to be something that they go someplace physically on campus to see, or could they access it from many portals? One of the things we didn't look at, but that I probably would if I were going to start this project today, is what does it look like on a mobile device and how portable? Is it way more beyond web-based? Is how mobile is the platform? And then a bunch of these platforms were initiated during the beginning of the AmeriCorps National Service Program era, and so some of them have the ability to do reference and background checks on applicants and volunteers, and that is very important for some of the programs, and since it was important to some of them, we included that on the platforms as we looked at it. So to go back to our unreadable slide, pretty quickly what we've done now is talk through how we define those 20 characteristics that are across the top. And so the next part is going to be for me to quickly talk you through the 15 platforms that we felt were strong in helping a campus organize a centralized service office, and highlight for you which platforms have what characteristics. I'll show you how that's set up in 1 minute, but I want to address one other question that we got. And that is a question of, is budget on here? And it did start when we began this research. Budget and cost was one of the characteristics we were looking at. But the reality is, since I'm not a real campus, I just couldn't get great answers from most of these places because they needed to know things that I couldn't make up. How many students did I have? How many staff portals did we need? How many faculty listings did we think we'd have? So I think it's completely fair for you to have budget questions, and as soon as you start talking to a platform, I would just have a conversation with them about how it's priced, but it isn't one of the characteristics that we're looking at this time. I'm going to take you to the first platform overview and talk you through this now. So we have 15 platforms. There are 2 on each page. They are in alphabetical order. And just to look right now at the Better Impact platform, which is on the left-hand side, what we do is we have all 20 of the characteristics in exactly the same place on this sheet. And so if you know it's going to be really important for you to have a searchable database, you're going to be able to look on each screen as we go through here and see whether this platform has a searchable database. The way to read this, again, looking at Better Impact, is that they do have their platform allows for both student and faculty to have profile, and we did not see the capacity for agencies to create a profile. That's why it's in black. Volunteer listings is in red, which means we did see that capacity, whereas searchable database is in black, which means we didn't see that capacity. Want to also just really clarify that these are viable companies that continue to improve and change, and there's absolutely a chance that there's already something wrong with this. But you know, it's a good starting place, and if you see a platform that has most of what you need, it'd be a great place to have a conversation. Also know that many of them have programmers on their staff, and if you need most of what they have and need something else, you might be able to add it. With these, I'm just going to give you a really quick overview maybe about the history of the platform or something that might be helpful to you in thinking about whether you might use it. Better Impact, some of you might know because it used to be called Volunteer 2. It's got 2 programs, Volunteer Impact and Community Impact. It was designed primarily for agencies to organize their own volunteers, like a hospital or a shelter. It did not start with a campus in mind. Bright Impact, as you can see, is really focused more on the reporting side. So if you are a campus that already has a fairly good system for helping students find placements, but you're looking at building up the part of your reporting capacity, Bright Impact might be for you. But if you really need to help with the volunteer placement side, you can see that Bright Impact probably isn't going to be the best website for you. Again, we're going to go through these fairly quickly. Cal State S4 is a neat platform that was designed by a couple schools within the Cal State University system, which does have a fairly comprehensive, organized approach to engage communities. And they have a number of requirements that are unique to them. And Cal State S4 really speaks to that. So if you are a Cal State, and I know there aren't a lot of them on the call, or collaborate with them or see yourselves as being organized in their way, then that may really be a good platform for you to look at. And I didn't memorize them all, so I got to find my notes again. The other thing to say about Cal State S4 is they have a really nice video on their website. So if you want to see if that's a good place for you to start, I just recommend that you look at that. College Serve clearly was designed for a college platform. So it's different than some of the other ones in looking at that. It's still relatively small. They're doing a lot of their testing with Weider University, and really happy to talk to people about customizing it for their own needs. Most of their experiences with their current clients. So that might be a good place for some of you to start if those look like characteristics that are important to you. CoMesh is another program that's similar to the Cal State S4 in that it was designed initially for certain campuses. And this one was a couple campuses in the San Francisco Bay Area, so it's not a commercial platform. I have been in touch with them. They're very interested in partnering with other agencies, so if those capacities look good, or if you're in that greater geographic area, certainly to be in touch with them might be helpful to you. Galaxy Digital, you can see by the amount of red, is probably one of the more comprehensive programs out there. They have a fairly comprehensive staff backing their program, and we're going to look at a couple of their screenshots after this, so I'm not going to spend much more time on them because you'll get a chance to see what they look like. Okay, GivePulse is what I would call a hybrid site, a little bit like a volunteer matching site. It's got a very youth-oriented feel. It's being used right now at UT Austin. It has a lot of not customized, prefabbed reports where they've really thought through what they need, a fairly complex way of doing volunteer placements. So if those look like things that would be important to you, that would be a good one to research further. Hands-On Connect is probably one of the most powerful and organized volunteer search capacities out there. It was designed initially for what I would call a volunteer center model, and that's where a community-based agency in a community is actually helping volunteers find placement sites. And that's the genesis of the Hands-On Connect. It absolutely can be modified for a higher education setting, and some of you really are volunteer centers for the students on your campuses, so it'll really apply. The other thing that Hands-On Connect has that I haven't seen on many other platforms is the ability to track donors and sponsors. So if your campus service center does a lot with fundraising or have those as part of your things you need to track and monitor, Hands-On Connect might be a nice site for you to start looking at. My service log is the other one that we're going to be showing you some screenshots of in a minute. And this one is does not have many learning components. Started with an AmeriCorps approach to service, but does have some really nice reports that I could see having a lot of power in institutions of higher education. Noble Hour, another strong program, in some ways really organized like Hands-On Connect, hours-based without any learning component elements at this point in its iteration, although like I said, a lot of these can continue to change. I'm about to talk about two platforms which were designed for something totally different than an institution of higher education. The first is Samaritan Technologies. Samaritan Technologies was designed for a large, complex nonprofit to help organize its own volunteers. So in this case, we might take a hospital system that has volunteers on different wards, that needs to do volunteer applications, volunteer screening, volunteer scheduling, and placement. So in some ways, that could absolutely apply to an institution of higher education, but that isn't really how they perceive themselves and how they were originally organized. So that's Samaritan Technologies, and one other that I'll get to in one more page. I really like Service Learning Pro because, like I said, when I started, I thought I was going to be more focused on tools for service learning as opposed to a broader approach to engagement. And it had a lot of things that I thought were important in the learning aspect of a community service experience. I am not sure how viable they are right now. I was trying to be in touch with them, some questions that I don't know if they are just doing an office move or something. So they've got some nice things there, but you need to have check if they're ready to work with you at this point. Volgistics is the other one, like Samaritan Technologies, that was designed for complex nonprofits to help organize their own volunteers. And again, I wouldn't tell you not to use it. I would just say that the way that they are organized is just a slightly different approach, and it might or might not be perfect for you. Volunteer Reporter, again, has its genesis in a completely different setting, and these are the RSVP programs that were part of Senior Corps, the National Service Programs. So really nice reporting based on some of the requirements that were unique to the RSVP program that can absolutely apply to campuses, but they don't come to it initially from that approach. And our last platform is Your Volunteers. The one thing, not one thing, but one of many things that's nice about Your Volunteers is if you're just using the base program for them, it's free. So if budget is an issue, this might be a good place to start. Obviously, because of that, they offer a little less customization than some of these other sites, but that's another one for you to be able to explore. And again, to repeat, we will be sending that chart, and you can look for yourself. That chart's going to come in an Excel format, and you are going to be able to sort by characteristics that are important to you and do some more research. So now we're going to look at two of these sites in a little bit more depth. We're going to challenge my technology and see if I can turn it over to Stephanie in Colorado for a minute.
Yay, look at that, all these skills. All right. There you go. Is that up?
I think it's up. So this is my service log. We're going to look at a couple of their screenshots. Again, I'm not promoting either of these products as better. It totally depends on what you need as your campus, but I wanted to have you a sense of what some of these products look like. So on my service log, this is Annabelle Lee. She is a student or a volunteer in this program, and you can see that we can collect some basic information about her and have 4 tabs on her. The enrollment tab indicates that if you had her as like an AmeriCorps volunteer, you could definitely track a lot about her. Then we're going to click to service sites and positions. And this is another part of the My Service Log platform where what they're calling this test site, you've got its address, you've got its phone number, and they need 2 kinds of volunteers, the garden volunteers and the town planning assistants. And so that agency has been able to put in what they're looking for, how many spots are available, which semester it's been updated for, and a volunteer can then link to that. So then let's go to hours logging. So this I really think is nice in that if Annabelle clicks on, say, that garden assistant or something else, we've got then a record of her hours, and they've got the capacity here to have the site verify that she showed up for those hours. And if we needed it, we can add some kind of a campus level or program approval too. So again, if you have some responsibility for tracking for students in a course or some requirements, this platform has some capacities that would be nice to help you in that. If we can look at comments, I referenced some of these have communication tools, and so this is just an example of Annabelle talking to Emily, who I think we can assume either works for the service center or is one of her training. And so just an ability to have a conversation about how things are going for her. This could be administrative. She hasn't had the time card signed, but it can also be asking her how the volunteer placement is going and identifying needs. You know, the agency wasn't ready for me, or I didn't feel safe there, are other things that your service center would need to take into account. And the last thing, do we have time to go to the electronic signature, Stephanie?
I think so, yeah, go ahead. Oh, go ahead, I'll go ahead.
That's you. So in this case too, just a technology that certainly didn't exist when I was younger, but where Annabelle can sign her time card, Emily can co-sign it. You know, this might go back to a faculty member. It might go to, if you've got a campus that has the portfolio approach to reporting and you want to have some verification that students have actually done the hours in their portfolio, that is a nice capacity for you. And so this is a lot of these sites have screens that look very, very similar to this, but just a sense that they are really well thought out, clearly people that have worked in service fields, and they've thought through a lot of things that we need on a daily basis. So we're going to now go to the Digital Galaxy site. So one thing that's really interesting about this, when you get into these conversations, you'll hear people offer you whitelisting. And whitelisting means that although we're on a Galaxy Digital page right now, St. Mary's College has Galaxy Digital running their service platform, but we don't know that here. We sure feel like we are on a St. Mary's site. So in this case, this is agencies with it. Well, it can sort by agencies within 5 miles of a zip code. And on the left-hand side, they're going to have the agencies in alphabetical list. And then on the right-hand side, they've identified some issue areas so that if a young person is really interested in working with animals or crime or counseling, they click on that, and then they can do a sub-search of, yes, I still need something within 5 miles in my home or something. And our next slide, Stephanie.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then after clicking on one of those links within the Galaxy Digital platform, an agency can have a profile page, and we talked a little bit about these, and sometimes they are formatted identically, and sometimes they an agency can have some more flexibility. Can't see it on my screen, but toward the bottom it has the ability to link directly to this agency's website. Start following them on Twitter. And then if we can go to that last page, Stephanie, mm-hmm. Look at how technology savvy we are. So then we've got, again, we're on Galaxy Digital, and we're no longer looking by agency, but we're into what volunteer placements actually exist. So in this case, we're looking for avid tutors. If you read more closely, you can see that this is going to link back to the San Ramon Valley Unified School District. And if we clicked on that link, it would take us to the agency profile. I don't think we need to do that, but nice. And this platform does have one of the things we talked about is you can actually sign up right from here. And we did talk about, are you a group or an individual? And so this, it's hard for me to imagine how we have a team of tutors, but so we might click on that and find out this is a placement for only individuals. I'm not sure. I kind of got off my script, but clearly this is the Digital Galaxy platform operating on the St. Mary's website and how they can click to some of that. So that was what we wanted to show you, and we are going to try really hard.
And as Jill is getting the PowerPoint back, please remember that if you've got questions that you want to make sure are brought to Jill or to anyone else that's facilitating this call, click on that Q&A button and submit your question, and we'll make sure that it gets integrated into that Q&A section coming up shortly. Thanks. Go ahead, Jill.
Yeah, I'm trying to go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was a buffer. There you go.
So is that working, Stephanie?
It is, yep.
So we are now going to go to my favorite part of this. Because I don't really like to tell you what I think is best. I was actually really uncomfortable saying anything about the platform. It's just like worrying that the platform rep was looking over my shoulder saying, we don't do that, we do things better. So what I think is absolutely vitally important is what's most important for you. We're gonna send you these next couple of slides, but I'm just gonna try to pose some questions that I think you need to pose for yourself as you contemplate this. Absolutely fundamentally, the most important one is, what do you want to be able to do? You know how your program's organized, you know how much staff you have, you know what you have to do to serve your campus, and you need to decide what's most important for you. Some questions that I would ask myself is, who's going to be using this tool? Is it your service center staff? Is it directly students? Do you see faculty actually logging into it and using it? Would you like community partners to be logging into it? And then within each of these audience, I would ask, just take that community partner question. Do you only want them to be able to see what placements are out there, or do you want them to actually be able to log in their volunteer placements? A question of, do you need to be able to approve students' placements, or do you really see yourself as a broker of just volunteer placements, just telling students what's out there, or do you have some responsibility to make sure they have a high quality experience and you need to monitor these placements and update them based on what feedback you get? You need to be able to approve where students are going and what track, whether they actually went there and how long they spent and what they did. In thinking especially about the relationship between students and the community partners, is it important to you that they be able to sign up through the platform? Do you need to know who's volunteering when? Do you need to verify the hours? I had said that earlier. And do you need capacity for group signups? Some really important technical questions, and I obviously incredibly not skilled to speak to these, but it's certainly who's going to host it. Is this, do you need the IT department on your campus to be bought into this? As we're talking, who's responsible for the relationship with the vendor? Is that you, or is that your IT department? Who's going to do troubleshooting when something doesn't work? Is that the service center? Is that your IT department? Or is that the platform? Who's responsible for maintenance? What happens when either the platform or your campus's system upgrades or changes? How do these stay integrated? And is somebody at the campus level looking out to make sure as they make changes on their campus website that your platform still works within it? A question of whether you're going to link to this directly from a campus website, or whether you are going to a separate place to see these, to have this platform experience. Some other questions is just really what's your capacity, your staff's capacity to learn a system? Are they completely overwhelmed already? What might this take off their plate, but what is it going to add on to it? And how much staff capacity to support other users? Because I think we all know the first thing that's going to happen is that people are going to forget their ID numbers, or forget their logins, or not know how to make changes. And then you've got a question of who's going to support them through that. And then certainly, things, especially in our field, if we're talking about having course listings, they're going to need to be updated every quarter, every semester, and certainly volunteer placements change constantly in terms of what community partners need. So who continues to make those changes? And then on a system-wide level, who deals with updates and maintenance? Finally, I don't know if it's really finally, but you've got to think about your budget, and please think about this in two different questions. One is, what are your upfront costs? What does it cost to buy and install the system? And then what are your monthly or ongoing costs? And that's two different kinds of money, and they both need to be considered as you make these decisions, this decision, sorry. So going from here, how would I get started? I would take my basic overline of what these platforms do, but then I would go immediately to the companies. I wouldn't try to do too much from the work we've given you for a couple reasons. One, these platforms change. Secondly, most of these platforms have hotshot design computer coders on them. So if you need one or two things to be changed, they might be really willing to work with you on that. So you shouldn't cut them off just because they're not on my chart for something that's important. I would absolutely contact other campuses that are using the product. I mean, it's just like buying anything else. You've got to know whether they respond to phone calls and whether they'll make the changes that they promised for you, that they'll make the changes. My impression, as Elaine mentioned, I haven't worked directly in the field for a number of years. I am floored by how much is out there, and really it looks like an amazing amount of it is really decent quality. So I think it's exciting. I think it allows us to focus instead of on some of the logistics of, I saw a bunch of you have all your placements on Excel or FileMaker profiles. I mean, it'd be an amazing opportunity to move to some of these platforms and get to focus on a deeper part of your role as an educator on these campuses. So I think there's a lot of good stuff out there.
Great. Thank you so much, Jill. So we're going to move quickly into Q&A. We've got some questions lined up, and we will spend the remainder of our about 10, 12 minutes together going through. Again, if you've got a question, click on that Q&A button. We'll do our best to get to to your questions. The first one, Jill, is if you could address, I know it's not part necessarily or specifically of the criteria, if you can address any of these systems and if they showed any capacity to deal with different types or different approaches to service learning. So for example, if you have faculty members who are working on community-based research where hours are not necessarily, the emphasis isn't necessarily on the hours spent, but a different kind of product of the service learning experience. And if any of the systems seem to have the capacity to record any of that in a different way than just kind of counting.
Yeah. Well, that it really gets to the question of what was the genesis of the system. So the ones that really started as tools to help agencies stay organized, no. Some of the ones that really did start in institutions of higher education and do have a little bit of that capacity around the question of reflection, group dialogues, moderated dialogues, I think they're starting to get that. And I think some of the tools that we said weren't really ready to organize service learning and community service experiences might be better at getting some of those research outcomes documented. So I'd look really at the genesis of the program, and there weren't as many by any means. If that's really where you're going, you've got a lot fewer choices to start with.
Yeah. Another participant was asking if anywhere there is included sort of sampling of institutions that you found that were using some of these systems. I know a lot of campuses automatically look for peer institutions in anything and everything that they do, whether that's because of the size, the institutional type, and if that was something that was documented anywhere through your research?
Well, on the original document that started this conversation, which was a Minnesota Campus Compact document, that is on there. And I think we could also pretty easily pose that question. It isn't something we've documented yet. Elaine, how can people get that Minnesota document?
We'll have to check with them, Minnesota Campus Compact, but if we can get it from them, we can send it out with the materials.
And that won't be as up to date, but that was one of the questions they asked is other campuses that were using the platforms.
And I do think if there are a few platforms that you're particularly interested in, then you could ask them to share a list of which are your are you willing to share some of the names of the clients that you have? I'd like to check references, or is that kind of idea. So you might be able to identify some of your peer institutions and then ask if any of them are using that platform.
And I think this is the converse of that same thing, is if you know that your service center is really organized in the same way as a sister campuses, I just start having the conversation with them about how they're organized.
Great. So we'll work on getting permission if we can to share that document as well, and the materials that will go out after the call. Jill, looking at some of the possibility for clients or users for some of these systems, particularly in some of our more rural states, a lot of times there will be one or two kind of anchor institutions in a, let's say, rural community where there may be some satellites or other institutions that are smaller, so community colleges, whatnot, in the area. Do you know anything about the capacity for some of these systems to be able to service multiple institutions, but under one sort of package to provide some capacity? Again, I'm thinking, and this question was posed more in rural communities, but I could see that working in a variety of different ways as partnerships between different institutions.
Absolutely, and I think it really gets to where does the platform sit, because anything that's going to be web hosted, that even if it's not multiple institutions, if you've got students who are, commuting from long distance or something, that same tool is going to be organized to support that. So absolutely, there are a couple of these systems that are working statewide with systems, and I think that would work just as well for rural. It's just about populating the nonprofit partners across a broad geography, but there's no problem with the platform supporting users who are in multiple locations, even if those locations are rural.
I think that would be great, and we encounter that quite a bit, particularly in the Mountain West, where those kinds of inter-institutional partnerships really allow for some of that capacity, and for something like this would be quite a benefit to folks.
Exactly.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I just said exactly, yeah.
Great. So another question, you got to this a little bit in some of the what's best for your campus section. If you're starting, I mean, obviously you suggest, going straight to the company if there is a platform that is meeting most of the criteria, meeting the needs that are specific to an institution. But within an institution, if you're having this conversation, so how can we have one system that can really capture data across different departments and programs? Do you have recommendations for who you think you should be convened to have that conversation to really make sure that the platform matches the institutional need?
I think it's a great question, and I think it's it has way more to do than just the platform, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, this is the question a lot of campuses are asking is, what is the place of service within the campus, and where does it sit, and is it a student center, is it a vice president of undergraduate education? You could use this conversation to broaden who your partners are on the campus, but I think the question is, where do you sit right now? Where do you want to sit? And then you're talking about who comes to the table to discuss it. I don't know, Elaine or Stephanie, you might have better answers.
Oh, no, I actually think that's a really good point to make. Is it's an opportunity to think strategically about who you want to have involved in shaping what it is going to be, and who, where the funding's going to come from, and et cetera. Stephanie, I don't know if you want to add anything.
The only thing I would say as well, and we have questions that come up, particularly around specific programs that are, let's say, Campus Compact programs that are provided to our member institutions, that looking at this more holistically in terms of how can a system like this perhaps lend to things like accreditation or institutional priorities or strategic plans, and providing some evidence of community engagement or of some of the strategic priorities that align with whatever the institution is really focused on. I think it would be a really strategic way to have this conversation and have it tie into initiatives that administrators would be perhaps more flexible about funding, and that it may position, whether it's you or a team of you that are kind of putting forward or investigating what would work best for your institution, and that may be a strategic way to move forward with it. Because there's that language is out there for whether it's HLC for accreditation here in the Mountain West, or whoever is your accrediting body, or whatever your strategic plan is for your campus. There are ways to tie that in with something like this that can provide evidence that would be helpful for administrators too, not just you and your community partners, faculty. All right, thank you, Jill. So one other question, and then we're going to look at some next steps to make sure that you all, as participants, have all the follow-up information that you need. And you mentioned this a couple of times, Jill, but I just wanted to go back because I think a lot of folks would be interested in, as you said, most of what the platform provides is what they're looking for, but a little bit of it is not there. What was your sense around the ability to modify the platforms or to make them sort of unique to the client? Did you get the sense that that was something that was readily available for most of these platforms?
I think it's one of those of you that have bought other technology will not be surprised by my answer, but I think what most people would say is they can do anything. Oh yeah, we'll do that, we'll do that. What I'm less confident, because I didn't take it to the next step, is will they really deliver? And, will they really reprogram it the way you need? Will it be affordable? What if there are tweaks? Can they keep working with you? So I know that they're really interested in making changes and making this work. I haven't executed it myself.
Okay, great. Yeah, I would imagine just from our own experiences building databases to track things like regional AmeriCorps programming and how expensive and time intensive it is, that that may be one of those cost issues too that would be perhaps a red flag or just an area to be cautious about moving forward if the system isn't exactly what folks are looking for.
And I would also say, you are all operating at this point. So you might, instead of thinking you're going to buy a Cadillac, buy a Prius that can make a little bit of your life better, and still keep some of that stuff in your service center until you're ready to outsource more of it. You don't have to do it all at once.
Great. In closing, just to make sure that, and I don't know if there's any last minute things, Elaine or Jill, that you wanted to make sure folks knew about before we go to follow up and next steps.
Nope, I'm good.
Okay. Jill, if you don't mind closing your screen real quick, then I can let folks know. We will be, as I mentioned before, sending out the both the evaluation and I'm trying to type and talk, which doesn't work for me very well, and the handouts, and we will look into looking for the Minnesota Campus Compact, the initial spreadsheet that listed some of the institutions that were using some of these systems, so that we can provide as much information to you, including the slides. The webinar is being recorded, and we'll also have that recording up on the Campus Compact of the Mountain West website, which is ccmountainwest.org. If you click on Member Campus Resources, it takes you to this database, and all you have to do is click under Webinar, and our webinars come up. This is our last one on community engagement and refugee resettlement programs. It will be listed here, and you can review it, share it with folks on at your institution. Just put it on mute and look at our faces because you like it. Whatever you'd like to do, this is where it can be found. And again, in conjunction with the handouts that we'll be sending out, you should have the information that you need. Thank you so much for your participation today. If you have any follow-up questions, feel free to contact us. Thanks so much, Jill, for your time and expertise on this matter. And thanks, Elaine, for co-hosting.
Okay, thanks everybody.
Thanks. Bye, guys.